Thank you all for joining. Your lines should be muted already. It looks like two of your lines aren't. Whoever dialed in at 413-549, and then
That's
two that
me.
you're. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind either muting your line by pushing *6 or #6, or if you mute your phone, that's great, just so we don't get any background noise when we do start presenting.
Okay.
But then if you do have any questions, you'll just have to unmute your line by pushing *6 or #6 and get those questions answered for you. But thank you for joining.
This is Nick Crespo.
Thanks for joining, Nick. Be sure to
All
mute your line, and we'll get started in just a second.
righty.
Okay, well, why don't we go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining the May Education Call on personal preparedness, emergency preparedness. As you may have seen on Facebook, how I've helped promote the call. Severe weather is already happening throughout the Midwest and has happened in the Southwest, so it's a perfect time to get a refresher on things that you need to know and things that you should be aware of if weather events or natural disasters like that happen. I'm very pleased to have Ms. Joan Thomas with us, who's the Executive Director for the Kidney Community Emergency Response Coalition. And if, Joan, if you are ready, feel free to take it away. And
Terrific. Thank you, Christy, and thank you for having me today to speak about personal preparedness for you and your family. These recommendations can also be used at your workplace, and we at KCER would like to thank you for taking an interest in better preparing your home and work life against threat of emergencies and also disasters. So the purpose of this training is to familiarize you with the basic personal preparedness concepts. Emergencies happen when you are at home or at work, in your car, or anywhere else you may find yourself. By the end of the short presentation, participants should be able to give reasons why preparedness is important, list the essential items for a preparedness kit or a go bag, describe the important parts of a basic plan, and also explain how to stay informed and to get involved. So people often wonder, what's the difference between an emergency and a disaster? Often, these are important terms to emergency managers, and although they're often used interchangeably and often sound ambiguous, they really mean different things. An emergency is usually local. It requires local response actions from your local fire, police, or emergency medical services. These responders and others to save or protect lives first and then property during the emergency. They will also maintain or ensure that the public health and public safety is basically protected to avoid any potential additional threats from that emergency. So it's a very local incident, basically. On the other hand, a disaster is an emergency considered severe enough by local governments and local response agencies to warrant additional response and dedication of resources beyond your normal local scope from your local agencies. So essentially, in a disaster, the needs to ensure life and property exceed the ability of our local responders within the community to handle and contain it, so therefore they will call in additional help, usually from the county or from their state. If the state's not able to help them, then they will bring it to a federal level. Research on preparedness does show that people who believe themselves prepared for disasters often aren't as prepared as they believe they are. 40% of survey respondents to a national survey from FEMA said they did not have household plans. 80% had not conducted home evacuation drills, and nearly 60% did not know their community's evacuation routes. So whether it's your home, your neighborhood, your place of business, or your school, you can take a few simple steps to prepare your community and compare yourself. Becoming more prepared in case of an emergency is easier than you might think. Preparedness can minimize the impact of an emergency and make a big difference in ensuring the safety and well-being of individuals, families, businesses, and also the community. So let's take a look at ways that you can be prepared. Make a go bag or go kit. Familiarize your family emergency preparedness plan. Stay informed from trusted media and get involved in your community. Emergencies and disasters can happen when you least expect it, such as a tornado, or they may develop slowly like a hurricane. This gives you time to prepare. They can happen anywhere, whether you're at work, at home, in a car, or anywhere else where you may spend time. So knowing that your family is safe by having a plan and reviewing it often will give you peace of mind so that you may continue to work during an emergency. Being prepared is ultimately about being self-reliant. When you can rely on your family emergency preparedness plan, you decrease the likelihood that you will need assistance for yourself and also members of your family. That results in our police, fire, and emergency responders' ability to respond to the critical situation at hand and help bring the community back to normal from the event or the incident, rather than dealing with individual issues that aren't directly related to that emergency or disaster. So preparedness basically starts with you, and then it branches out into your family, friends, work organization, and ultimately your community. People with disabilities and people of access and functional needs have to take a very proactive position on personal preparedness. We need to prepare as if there's no one else that can rescue us because, in reality, in a moderate or large event, we need to consider that no one will be able to rescue you very quickly. That doesn't mean they won't be able to, but let's make the assumption that they can't and they need a few days. So response could be quick, but it could take longer. But you need to prepare as if you're not going to have any of those resources that you may typically depend on. The best way that people can start to plan is by looking at the individual parts of their daily lives and then figuring out what you really need to have in place to stay healthy. So it's important for you to find out what emergency plans are, where you receive services on a regular basis, and don't be afraid to ask them. So if you're a person who gets dialysis treatment, what are your facility's emergency plans? Another question, when you're at work, are you and your coworkers trained on the emergency plans, and are they updated periodically? And do you know how to contact work or your facility or family members in an emergency or disaster? Dialysis patients have special considerations. They should have an emergency kidney or renal kit that has been tailored to their needs and work on that with their dietitian. This is not only true for adults, but also for children. Children of different age groups, whether infants, children, or adolescents, have different dietary needs. Also, should your facility close for some emergency, find out ahead of time from your facility how and who you should contact to get treatment at another facility. It is helpful, if not important, that you have your most recent monthly lab someplace safe in case you have to get treatment at another facility. Just makes it a little easier. Have a good supply of your medications and know the proper amounts you need to take daily. Also have current contact information for your doctors and regular non-911 numbers for your local police, fire, and emergency medical services. Sometimes they're a good resource to get a question answered, even when it's not an emergency. You don't want to use the 911 number. Sometimes we need different transportation to get to a dialysis facility and then back home. So know what options you may have in your community ahead of time. It will help a little bit. These steps will help you be better prepared to stay as healthy as possible in an emergency disaster. So before I move on, I thought I would just stop for a moment and see if there's any questions.
And just a reminder, if there are questions, to unmute is *6 or #6. I forgot to mention that in the beginning.
Hello?
Yes.
Yes, I do have a question. How much medication should we have on hand, and how would you suggest we get that, since your insurance will pretty much stop you from having any more than a day before you can refill it?
Right, that is a really big issue for emergency managers and also for nephrologists and physicians to determine that, because the insurance companies won't allow you to have access extra medications. And probably the best thing to do is to speak with your doctor and see what you can do about getting a little bit extra, because going stop and they'll say, okay, we'll allow patients to have a certain amount of extra medication. But if it's something that happens very quickly, such as a tornado or an earthquake, it's a whole different story. And you only have what you have on hand. So that's something probably you'd want to talk to your doctor about to see if there's a way around that.
I'm calling from Seattle, and may I insert something here?
Sure.
I had a kidney transplant, and I took one of the classes afterwards that was actually taught, partially taught by the pharmacist. And I asked that same question because it becomes really crucial in a lot of cases, but especially with a transplant. And I was told by the pharmacist, and I've actually used it, and it works, is that you actually are allowed, usually, to order your refills at 23 days, not at 30. And so I get my prescription, I write the date down, I mark 23 days later, and I reorder it. And what that does is it does allow you to accumulate a few so that you can create a situation for yourself where you've got enough medication to take with you when you travel or in case of an emergency. It takes a while to accumulate it, but what I wind up doing is keeping the old bottle and start to add into that, and then keep track of how many pills are in there on the front of it. So I hope that's helpful.
Okay, yeah, thanks.
That's great information. And a lot of people do that. They kind of squirrel away a little bit of extra medication if they can, put it to the side, or order early if they're able to. So that might be something you can work out with your physician to get that prescription maybe a little bit earlier so you can refill it earlier, and then at least you know you have something on hand if something happens.
Or even the pharmacist. I mean, this came from a pharmacist.
Okay,
So,
good. Great.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Any other questions before I go on? Okay. Okay, so let's discuss some of the items we'd need to create a Go bag or a Go kit. Do an inventory of the things that you use on a daily basis to live independently, and then think about what's essential for those items, almost like if you were packing for a vacation or a trip. As described earlier, when a disaster strikes, immediate help and supplies may not be readily available. Before an emergency, gather the necessary resources you need to act on whatever plan you put in place so that you can get through that disaster. While 72 hours or 3 days is recommended by most emergency management officials and FEMA, it is better to have at least 6 to 7 days of supplies in an easy-to-carry evacuation kit, bag, or container. If you can't afford to have 6 or 7 days, even an extra day, any extra that you can have benefits you just in case you can't get out as fast as you'd like. And also consider a bag that has rollers like small luggage, or a knapsack, which makes it a lot easier to carry around. If you end up going to a shelter for 4 or 5 days, or if you're stuck at home or work, which would be sheltering in place, think about the essential things that you're going to need to be able to manage to stay well. If at all possible, have additional supplies at home in case you cannot leave your house. So canned foods, bottled water, if you can't trust your water supply, things like that are very helpful. You also want to consider what you days. If possible, prepare 2 kits, one for your home and then a second smaller portable kit to take with you if you have to leave your home. Also, if possible, have small kits for your office or car. So if you're working, maybe have something in your bottom drawer or in the locker that you can use, the most important things that you would need, or keep them in your car if you do drive. It's very helpful if everyone has a kit. And a kit really needs to have some very basic things in it. Some water, food, basic disinfectant solutions. Most people like to customize their kit, and that's good because it will work for you. To make sure has the things that you need, this slide shows you some examples of food and kitchen supplies that you may want to include. I would keep in mind to rotate your water, food, and medications so that if you have made a kit and have those items in there, you should really use those items within about 6 months. So let's say you pack your bag today, and 6 months from now, take those items out, use them, and replenish that with new food, water, and medications so that everything in your kit is fresh and hasn't expired. Individuals with access and functional needs may want to consider some of the following items: extra glasses, hearing aid battery chargers or extra batteries, copies of medical prescriptions, supplies for service animals, and also necessary medical supplies. You can visit the website ready.gov, that's READY.gov, a complete list of suggested emergency items for people with access and functional needs. For all people of all ages, having the essentials for daily living and sleeping will keep you comfortable, even in an uncomfortable circumstance. So be sure to include some warm clothes, because even in a hurricane, it can get very cold in a warm climate, comfortable shoes, and blankets. A NOAA weather alert radio will help keep you informed on weather conditions, and they're also not very expensive, and they're battery operated. Some of them are solar panel, have a little solar panel on them. Even if it's not sunny, they will charge up if you put them near a window, or you can crank them. Also, a first aid kit should be customized beyond simple treatment items. You would want things that would work for you. So, if possible, you include your medications, prescriptions, and any personal medical devices you may use. Also, having the right tools to open food, such as a can opener and a handy, accessible shut-off tool to turn off your utilities if required, so that if something is coming and you have to leave your home, sometimes authorities will tell you you need to shut off a valve, shut off a utility. If you have it somewhere handy, you can just grab it, do that, and then leave the house. These things will greatly enhance your preparedness and your ability to react in an emergency. Here are some other considerations for your kit. Pull together health and information cards with critical information such as your ID, people to contact, and any medical issues affecting you. Make copies and store in a waterproof plastic container. Some people will also put this on a computer disk or a flash drive, save that. Sometimes it's good just to have a paper copy because you can read that. You don't need a computer to look at it. Also, acquire a cell phone with a GPS if you don't have one, and program your emergency numbers into your electronic address book within the phone so they can be activated easily. Some are even programmed not to even require speech. You can just press a button. Take pet food, bottled water, medications, any vet records you may need, leash, cat litter, pan, manual can opener, food dishes, first aid kit, and other supplies with you in case they're not available later on. Of course, this would be for a much bigger event, but if you have these things, like if you're somebody who likes to camp and you have things, you can use the same items. Before you find yourself in an emergency situation, consider packing a pet survival kit if you have animals, which could be easily transported if a disaster hits. So I'll just stop here again and see if there's any questions. Okay. So now we'll talk about an emergency plan. So as a family unit, whether you're a family of 1 or you're a family of 10, plan and write down what you will do in advance. Give everyone an opportunity to speak about what they may be anxious about, but also allow them to say what they think they'll need so that the family can better prepare. Then determine what sort of aid might be available to emergency. This will also help you pack things, decide what you really need, and whittle down what you don't. Also, it's good to know about the hazards that most likely affect your community, and most of us know what areas flood in the spring and whether we get blizzards in the winter and tornadoes in maybe the spring, and then how it's usually responded to so that you kind of have an idea of how to plan. Engage any of your government agencies, the local ones, about their emergency response information, and many, many agencies now have lots of emergency information that they'll share with you for free. They'll give you lists and different checklists that you can use to really help make planning easy. And also find out what your schools and religious organizations are also doing to prepare, because they may be a terrific resource as well in an emergency. Planning does not have to be complicated, and after all these lists, it probably looks overwhelming, but it really doesn't have to be. You can do this piece by piece. Contact information is usually very important. We need to know what's going on around us, and especially like if household members, friends, and family get separated, we want to know where everyone is and that they're safe and okay. You want to arrange how your family and household members can contact you and how you can contact them if you must leave your home suddenly. Also, find a secure place to store things that you may need that can be easily accessed in an emergency. So if you have a car, you can put that in your trunk. If you have a family friend who's outside the area where maybe emergencies often hit, maybe they can hold it for you. It doesn't hurt also to talk to either your landlord or service provider, family, or roommates to discuss what plans are in place for emergencies that might occur. Have contact information for a friend or family member that's out of town. In case a local phone service or internet is not working, it may be easier to get updated information using this person who's out of town as a go-between, and that they can also be a vehicle where your family, friends can call them, and you can get information back and forth through that person because they're not affected directly by the emergency. Also, it's helpful to learn what you'll need to know for different kinds of emergencies, how to evacuate or shelter in place. And sheltering in place is when you stay at home. Where emergency equipment may be located, where designated meeting places, where you will evacuate to, things like that. Some counties have evacuation zones and areas. Some decide that when the emergency happens, so then you'd have to listen to your radio, listen to media to know where to go. A meeting place is good for household members to meet if they can't return home. So if your area is cut off because of something happens with a road or it gets flooded, everyone will know in your family to meet at a predetermined place, such as your aunt's house. If you're not able to get home, everybody can convene there, and we know that we're safe. We're not just wandering around not knowing where to go. Also learn what to do for each kind of emergency. For example, if you use a wheelchair, can you access the safe area for a tornado, which is usually the basement, or do you need to go to an alternate place? Being self-reliant is so important, and assume responsibility for your safety as much as you're able to. Even if your building has a plan that takes into account any kind of disability, it's good to check in with them and make sure that they understand and that you understand what needs to be done, you know, in certain kinds of situations, whether it's a fire or a flood or evacuation. Learning escape routes and how to exit a building without help, if necessary, is important, as well as establishing 2 evacuation routes in case the primary one is blocked. That's always good in any case, whether you're at work or your facility, knowing how to get home 2 different ways Most people have that option. Sometimes people don't. There's just one road that gets you home or to work or to your facility, and see what you can work out as an alternative if possible. To know evacuation routes within a building, not just roads now, but inside. If there's 3 fire doors, know where they are. So if you can't get to one or if it's too crowded, you can go to another one. Then lastly, if you have pets, you need to plan for them too, as if there were people, by either locating shelters that allow pets or knowing maybe a vet or an ASPCA that's willing to take them in. And your vet can be very helpful in offering recommendations, as can be different online sites such as the ASPCA and other animal-related organizations. You will need to have a pet carrier for your pet if you do evacuate, regardless of where you go, unless it's a service animal, so just be aware of that. So how do you know if you should stay or if you should leave? It's a big decision, and sometimes it's not always our own decision. So first, you'd want to find out how you'd be warned of an emergency. If the warning message is not accessible to you, by this I mean, let's say they send out text messages in your county and you don't have texting on your phone, it would be a good idea to find out from your emergency organizations how you could get that message a different way. Do they leave maybe they use a voicemail system where they'll leave you a message on your answering machine, and then at least you'll get the message as well. Now, evacuation is when local officials either request or order a community to leave the area to go to a shelter or another location of a person's choosing so the community can remain safe. Shelter in place, on the other hand, local officials request or order a community to stay put, and it's usually at home until it's safe to go back outside. You can also contact your fire department or emergency office to see if they may register for people with disabilities. Then at least they know who you are, and then if you need help, they already know where you're located and can check in on you and make sure everything is okay. So that can be very helpful. Local officials are also a best source of information when determining whether to evacuate or shelter in place. So in the event of an emergency, listen to your radio, follow the directions of the emergency officials. In general, sheltering in place is appropriate when conditions require you to seek immediate protection in your home or place of employment or at school or any other location when disaster strikes. It's something very immediate. If they know a big snowstorm is coming, that might be different. They'll recommend everybody go home and stay home because there might be a very heavy snowstorm or blizzard and they don't want people to leave because it's a life safety issue. So you should take steps to prepare in advance, as we covered earlier, in case local officials direct you to either evacuate or shelter in place. If you determine that you need to leave the area or have been told you have to leave the area, it really is helpful, as I mentioned earlier, to have a variety of alternate routes in case roads become obstructed or get very crowded. Public transportation is also another way to evacuate, but of course you need to know what those schedules are, and not all public transportation runs 24/7. So it's helpful to listen carefully to media for any alterations to normal schedules during any type of emergency, or know the phone number of the transportation you may utilize so that you can call them and see if they have a recording so that you know what they're doing. And if you are leaving, again, you may have to turn off your utilities, so you need to have that tool. You want to remember to lock your door at home, and while this sounds very simple, if you're busy and you're concerned about evacuating, getting your family out safety, these are little things that become big things if you forget to do them. You want to also remember to take that go bag that we recommended earlier. Whether you decide to stay put in an emergency or evacuate to a safer location, you'll need plans in advance for your pets. So again, if you do evacuate the home, do not leave your pets behind if at all possible. Pets most likely can't survive on their own, and if by some remote chance they do, you may not be able to find them when you return. I think we all remember what happened with Katrina. That was a very big issue. Again, you can check with your vet or local animal shelter for any information on evacuation with your pets. And also remember that household members, especially children, they get very upset with pets behind, which can hinder your ability to even evacuate, because then you have to deal with the upset of that. So I'll pause for a moment here and see if there's any other questions. Staying informed and getting involved. We'll get into that. So we live in an information basis where rumors can spread much faster than validated news. So it's really helpful to stay informed by tuning into verified sources, so trusted media. This helps everyone to make good decisions on their based on best information. So select that trusted local media in advance and know how you'll be able to tune into them, either it be by television, radio, or internet, which would maybe help you monitor updates or events, so you have alternate ways of getting information. Listen carefully to the instructions from government authorities, because they usually know exactly what's going on, which to the best of their knowledge, and also share your preparedness planning with others so that they're not concerned and they don't go out looking for you when you're already safe somewhere. While it's important to be aware, also take care in giving out information to other people, especially younger children. Repetitive images of damage and destruction can be really harmful to anyone, but children also, it really affects them. Also, not all information that we hear on the media is verified or trustworthy, so please be cautious what you share with others, because it may not be accurate. So here's a strategy to make disasters a little bit more manageable. First, think about what you do before a disaster strikes. Remember that it's always an asset to keep physically fit, if at all possible. Stay as healthy as you can, especially in an emergency. And finally, don't forget to ask your employer about emergency plans at work. And also ask your facilities if you're a patient or a family member, so you know what your dialysis facility will do. Many not-for-profits, non-government organizations known as NGOs, community organizations, they provide volunteer and training opportunities that deal in disaster preparedness. These classes and groups can help you take what you learned today and apply it to help others and yourself. As New York City Mass Transit Agency has a slogan, if you see something, say something. This is something that we should all live by to help protect our communities from the threat of unlawful actions. If something doesn't seem right to you, alert authorities so they can check it out. Help friends and family. Get started by participating in crime prevention and reporting. You can also take classes in life safety, CPR, AED, and first aid, or an emergency response. There are many ways to volunteer to support first responders and community safety organizations. Of course, not all of us are able to volunteer for a variety of different reasons, but be familiar that there are volunteer organizations that do assist communities in an emergency or disaster. So if you see these kinds of emblems on someone's jacket, you can be comfortable with looking at ID that these are people here to help. Just wanted to add some helpful links here. Preparedness is actually a 365-day-a-year activity that all of us should take very seriously, but do it in pieces, a little bit at a time. It's important that every day we do a little something to keep ourselves as prepared as we possibly can. So these links are helpful. I mentioned ready.gov earlier. They have a lot of great information. It's all free checklists that you can download, and they can help you think about things that maybe you didn't think that you could have. Small things, items that would be handy to put in a go bag, or contact information that you might not have thought firsthand you need. A lot of people don't know the phone number or or maybe their home insurance number. But if you have it written down someplace and it's safe, it makes it much easier than if you need to call your insurance company or something like that. If you don't have a computer or internet at home, you can use a computer at your local public your personal preparedness strategies and meeting your new goal of being able to be self-sufficient for a number of days in an emergency. So here are the key takeaways from today. There's many things you can do right now to prepare. Do a little at a time so it's not overwhelming. Make a kit with everything you need to be self-sufficient for at least a week. Write a plan with everyone's concern and plan on how to shelter in place or evacuate. Always listen to emergency managers and government officials for direction. Also listen to verified news outlets and government agencies for up-to-the-minute and accurate information. You can get involved in your community, and it may help you to help other people prepare as well. If people see you getting prepared, they may feel get the bug, and they'll do things. To open this up to the audience, does anyone have any questions or comments?
Can KCER provide to the patients and family members on the call if they had questions or additional questions after the call or any other things that come up as far as being prepared as a kidney patient?
Sure, that's a great question. So let me just go to the next slide. Here we have our, see here it says, can you see the slide, www.kcercoalition.org? That's our website, and we have a lot of information. And eardo.org.com, we have both, and both will respond to that address. If you just in KCER, usually KCER Coalition will pop up. We have a very extensive website with a lot of information about hazards, about what patients can do, things you can download, a lot of different links. Some of the links I mentioned earlier, plus plenty more. There's a place where you can contact us if you like to, if you have questions. It also has all the ESRD networks in the country, so you can find out what network that you are, what region you're in, if you need to speak with them. There's a lot of resources on that site. I think it's a good one-stop shopping if you're looking for any kind of emergency preparedness information.
This is Nick Crespo. I have a comment more than a question. Yeah, the situation, I live over here down in Florida, and mainly what we encounter are hurricanes or hurricane threats. And some years ago, we had one that, that gets close, and what they do in the dialysis clinic is they call the patients in. The thing about hurricane is that you have plenty of warning. You have time to prepare, unlike other disasters. But they call the patients in to dialyze, so just in case something would, the lights would go out, or whatever, we get a direct hit. And they would call the patients in, so they could go dialyze. So I remember being called in, going in there, and I run 4 hours, and they said they were running everybody 3 hours because they just wanted to get it out. So I said, I thought to myself, well, they should run me like full treatment. But what happens is the dialysis clinic is, it's out of commission for a few days. That's what I get. So I asked about that, and the response I got was, well, we have our homes too, and we have to go. And that's a point that the first responders, the dialysis clinic staff, and people like that do have their own homes that they have to go secure and take care of their own families. So it's very important that there's a plan, a contingency plan, where when disasters happen, or they're going to happen, that staff from other locations in the states, from other locations in the state or country, whatever, bring in extra workers, because that is a point. I mean, what happens is the persons, the dialysis staff, their house is, they're gets blown away or something, whatever. Bringing in staff from the
Part of that.
Yeah, I can answer part of it. Go ahead.
Well, let me say something first. The reason they did 3 hours was you're on short and repeated shifts so that they can get the entire clinic dialyzed. Because the thought is that you're only going to be without it for about 2 days. Another clinic will open if they're unable, or you'll be able to get back there the next time or the day after you're to be dialyzed. That's why they put it down to 3 hours. It's to get everybody into that clinic before there is an emergency with enough dialysis to carry you through that initial emergency. Not so
that is true. No, I agree. I understand that, but what happens is 2 days later, the clinic is able to open, but the staff, they have issues, in personal issues in their home. Their home might be flooded. It might be something that they can't not come to work. So you can have a dialysis clinic open and then those staff. So bringing in staff from locations that were not affected, it's a good idea, because, like I said, you can open up and then some of the staff...
And that's what they would do. That's what they would do. Those are part of the contingency plans.
Yes.
Well,
Facilities have emergency management plans. They have them. Also, that we have 3 large dialysis organizations in the country that have extensive emergency management plans, are able to jump in and be able to supply that. We also encourage facility staff to have their own personal, just like what you went through. Yeah. We do things like this for facility staff so that they also are prepared, because basically we want people comfortable, and that would be true for patients too, to be comfortable to go in their own. It helps. When it comes to treatments, I've been in KCER over years. We've never had, and we've had some disasters, local and also larger. No one's gone without treatment for days. Facilities are excellent when they know about a disaster that's coming, like a hurricane. They're excellent at preparing patients and getting them ready so that at least they won't need treatment for the next 3 days. So that's excellent. Plus, then patients go on their emergency diet. So all those things help the patient to stay as healthy as possible. They're also able to bring in supplies, the larger organizations, and they do support the smaller ones that don't have the resources. Often they'll jump in and help out and bring portable supplies in so patients who urgently need care can get it. Do everything, we might not have everything on a checklist, but everything you have is better than having nothing and just not knowing what to do, because that's a terrible feeling and it's not empowering at all.
Yes, I hope it works that way, because I heard some stories of Katrina. Everybody was just running around like ants. So,
well, that's why
hopefully.
That's why KCER started, because of Katrina. And it was funded by the government because there were such issues with Katrina. So nobody wants to see a repeat of that on any level.
Well, I hope everybody learned a little bit from it. Yeah, very important. Also, I just want to recommend, and I'm going to myself, that all the dialysis patients, or any patient of any chronic disease, should have those those little badges, the little what do you call it, little necklaces or bracelets. I myself have one for a few years when I began dialysis. It's outdated, and I need to update it because I was just watching this disaster we had last night with the train, and watching everybody, the first responders. You know, sometimes the first thing they do is good saving to people. But you're a dialysis patient, you have no urine output like myself. They'll just kill the person because they're overloaded with fluid. Or sometimes they give, you know, the first responders, you know, they're following their protocol and what's customary to do. But in dialysis patients, for example, it's different. You know, you just can't inject potassium into them or just give them a bunch of saline because, you know, so it's good that they look for those things. They look for little badges and they're informed, oh, this is a dialysis patient, and some kind of information in the wallet that says, you know, I have no urine output, I have high blood pressure, or that they can treat the person properly. So that's something, I myself, I'm applying this for myself, that there's just a tip on there that it's good to have the proper IV and verifying if you're a transplant patient or you're a dialysis patient. I mean, that's the best you can do in a situation like that.
Well, that's an excellent recommendation, and absolutely, if you have some kind of medical ID on you, they do look for that first. So that is very helpful. Any other comments or questions? Well, Christy, if there's no other questions or comments, I'll turn it back over to you. But I wanted to first say, yes? I'm sorry.
Joan, it's Mike Guffey. I'm sorry, I was having fun trying to unmute my phone.
Okay.
I had muted 2 or 3 ways. I was just going to say, since I do this, I appreciate the presentation, and since I do this for a living with the business continuity as well, when we went through stuff with shutting off utilities and some of those things, I always want to stress that it's life safety first. If you're not comfortable shutting off utilities, or if it's raining, don't stand in a puddle and be playing with electrical.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Any of that stuff. It's common sense, but, you know, in a disaster, you have to stop and think, and it's really life safety first. I will second what Joan said about ready.gov. Again, I work for a bank in the business continuity area, and I pass out a lot of their forms to people when they ask employees for things for their home. They got a lot of great ideas for checklists, for calling tree type stuff that you could use with your children, so they would know, you know, if they're out, rather than saying, I need to go to Aunt Jones. Where's Aunt Jones? What's a greenhouse? It's really important in those situations. And the other one I just sort of have from personal experience is, if you know you're having something coming, it's always a good idea to get some additional cash. Because in a lot of those disaster situations, cash is king.
And also gas for your car if you...
yeah, gas for your car. I would, if you have a chance, get gas for your car and make sure your car's full, and get some cash, because a lot of times in the immediate center after an emergency, after something goes down, a lot of the power's down, which takes out ATMs. You know, a lot of the buildings for banks may be closed temporarily. It may be 48 hours before they come back. So if you have cash, you'll get faster service.
Or service at all.
Yeah. So that was my comment. Thank you, Joan.
Thank you. Okay, well, I do thank you for having me today and being on the call. And I hope you got some nuggets out of this that will be helpful for you in your day-to-day life and being prepared and getting to and check out all the resources we have there. We have a lot of different things that you can use, and if you have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to us or to reach out to your local network. So thank you, Christy, for having KCER on your education call. We really appreciate it.
No, thank you, Joan, for taking the time. And like I mentioned at the beginning, I will have the recording hopefully available by Friday, so you'll have all this contact information in front of you if you weren't able to view the slides live. And if any other questions come up after the fact, you'll know where to go and who to ask. But Thank you again, Joan, for taking the time to prepare or to present on this very important topic. And if there aren't any last-minute comments, then I think we are good to go. Thank you all for joining, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.